So I thought we'd start off today by traveling back in time, late 70s,
Yeah.
and you're in the process of writing what will become a global anthem. So could you tell us a little bit about how the song came about, who sang it, how you wrote it, anything you can share with us about that creation?
I'm going to try and make this quick because I'm so damn long-winded. Um, what happened was we were just very young songwriters starting out, my partner Bernard Edwards and myself. And we had a string of hits with Sheep, and somehow the record company didn't understand this style of music called disco. So they just decided to get a guy from the mailroom because he was Puerto Rican, and they figured he knew something. Um, and and they had a meeting with us, and they asked us to produce the Rolling Stones. And we thought to ourselves, we play and sing everything on the record. I mean, like, how are we gonna play and sing everything on a Rolling Stones record? So then they said, well, can you do Bette Midler? And we said, well, Bette Midler is so closely tied to Barry Manilow, they're just gonna think it's another Barry Manilow hit. Um, so then I suggested to the head of the label, how about this? Why don't you give me your secretary or give me the person who has sold the least amount of records? And he said, my secretary? I said, yeah, because what I do is I would construct a record about how she's the best singer on the label and you don't even know it. And I'd write a smash for her. Now, believe me, I was totally full of bull, but I meant it in my heart. I thought that I could visualize something like that. And then he says, well, we have these girls that are sort of like sisters to us, and they actually happen to be real sisters. And I was like, going, okay, I can work with that concept. And the horrible thing about this is we did the whole album without Sister Sledge. We didn't meet them until we finished the record. They came in that day and they heard their album finish. And they were like, what's that? And I was like, that's your record. So we then told Kathy Sledge to sing on top of us. So basically, it's Chic singing along with Sister Sledge. But the end result was it put them on the map. It proved that we knew how to visualize concepts and write according to a concept. And and that's how it all happened. And then the way that the organization happened is after September 11th, three friends of mine were crashed in they were in the first plane that was crashed into the World Trade Center. And Nancy and we got phone calls from everybody around the world, from the Mandela family. I mean, just every single person we knew. One, because we lived in New York and they were like wondering if we were hurt, but they also wanted to know if we knew anything about what was going on. At that time, we realized that that there was a lot of violence going on in New York against people who just looked Arabic. And I kept thinking to myself, how crazy is this? If a white person robs a bank, or if a black person robs a bank, not every black person robs the bank. It's only the one who did it. Not every Arab person who crashes the airplane, not every Arab person crashes airplanes. That was the ones who did it. It doesn't make any sense. But still, there was a huge amount of violence going on. So we decided that we should just try and teach people about other cultures, because if you knew about another person's culture, you might not be so quick to judge anybody just because of the way they look. Um, and the only reason why I was able to come up with that, because I had been involved with Live Aid. I had been involved with these huge organizations and these massive concerts that raised tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. But guess what? At the end of the day, that money never really got to the people it was supposed to get to, because the tough people were stronger than the weak people. So if the money came into the country, they would just take it. All right. So I didn't want to make that mistake again. And I just have to be very honest. Being a Black American, I knew that if I made a mistake like that, they put me under the jail. So I just said to the people in my organization, we had to have a 100% success record. Not believing that was possible, but that's just how high we set the bar. And here we are today.
How soon after 9/11 was the record recorded? And how many people were involved?
I don't know exactly how many days. I mean, come on, you don't ask a musician. Oh, 10 days? Okay.
I'm asking because it's phenomenal. The turnaround
Yeah,
is incredible.
10 days. And we had, it honestly felt like the safest place on earth. That recording studio felt like, it felt like Nirvana. We were just in this beautiful place with all these beautiful people. Listen, from Angelique Kidjo to, I mean, just everybody was there, big movie stars. But what we did was, unlike Live Aid, we decided to invite sports people. We decided to invite doctors, people who were just volunteers. We just wanted everybody who was involved in the effort of helping people, and just people who just wanted to be there to give us emotional support, because we knew we'd have to do a whole lot of work afterwards, and we couldn't do it alone.
So the record is released almost very shortly after 9/11.
Yeah.
And then 6 months after 9/11,
Yes.
after my homework,
Okay. So
a video comes out. Tell us a little bit about that.
right. So the first thing was shot by Spike Lee. We go to uh, we go to the film festival, and they made a special entry for us because we were actually too late to submit our film for Sundance. And for some reason, they said they looked at the movie, they felt moved, they allowed us to come in, and I'll never forget this feeling. We got such a long standing ovation, they had to throw us out of the theater so that the next movie could show. And it made us feel like, one, we had done something to touch people's hearts, but we also noticed that children were only seeing negative images. Well, my first professional job happened to be with Sesame Street. I called my friends at Sesame Street and said, hey, let's make a children's version of We Are Family, and let's invite all the characters that are famous to be involved. And what would that say? We'd be able to be didactic without being, yeah, we'll see how these characters are together. All we had to do was show it to them, and kids understood without us beating them up. They just would look at it and go, how come Dora the Explorer is with Barney? How come this one is with that one? They're not on shows together. And they kept asking us questions like that, and they would answer it for themselves. They would say that by them singing a song like We Are Family Together, it actually sounded better to them. I don't know why, but it did. And it just worked right away. And from that moment on, we knew that working with young people was much better than working with people who had already had their minds made up. Well, I hate this person because of that. I disagree with that person because of that. We worked with people that were open-minded. I remember when I was very young, I was incredibly open-minded. You know, people think the Black Panther Party was this organization that we just ran around with guns every day. I mean, give me a break. Are you kidding me? You know what I did? I would sweep up people's houses and the sidewalk, paint elderly women's houses, take them to the pharmacy. We would feed children. That's what we did. I said, man, have you ever seen a Black Panther hanging on the hood of a car while it's driving down the street and shooting it? I mean, give me a break. No, we did community work. We did community service. And one of the most important things that we were taught was how to run a business. The Black Panther Party had a special program called Officer of the Day. And they would take the newest Black Panther and let that person run the organization for the day. And Nancy and I found out years later that that's what they do on submarines, that the person who's driving the submarine is the newest person on the boat. And they say, guess what? Everybody's life is in your hands. And they teach this kid how to navigate a submarine like their first day. And that's what they did in the Black Panther Party. They taught us how to be able to deal with vendors, to be able to understand their business, to teach them that it was actually smarter for them to give us the food that they were going to return to their suppliers, because one, they get the tax write-off, two, you'd help the kids in the community, and you wouldn't have to sell, back in those days, what they used to call day-old bread. Us poor people, we lived on day-old bread. Next thing you know, we give it to these kids, and they were the happiest kids. They could learn. They loved us. The people in the community loved us. We got along with them great. And I remember, and I don't mean to pontificate, I'm going on, but I remember many, many years later, I was standing in front of our old office, which had now become a beauty salon. And a cop walked up to me, and he looked at me and he says, "You used to be a Black Panther, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "I wonder why we didn't work together, because we were standing for the same thing." And I said, "Yeah, we used to wonder that too." And he could see the tears forming in my eyes, because I could think of all of my friends who were killed, and it looked like a high school yearbook. We were children. I was 16 years old. I was 15 when I joined the party, 16 when I finally left. And in those few months, in that year, basically a year and a half, I learned so much about dealing with people, so much about being a human being, so much about smiling to people that probably would frown at me sometimes, but I'd actually get them to smile. And that's what I live for to this day. I mean, all day long, I've been smiling at guys who are looking at me weird. And the next thing I know, they're going down the escalator and they turn back and they smile at me.
So, an activist from a very early age, still an activist today. I want to just go back to the video that you made in collaboration with Sesame Street and Disney and Nickelodeon, because there's a very important aspect to that video I think is worth sharing, is that shortly after video was made, it was introduced as an educational DVD, which was free in the US to public and private elementary schools, and became an educational tool to promote understanding, tolerance, and empathy in the aftermath of 9/11. So what began as a song has now taken on a whole new meaning, and people are responding to this song and feeling part of one. They're feeling one. They're feeling together. They're looking beyond our differences, and they're healing. And this video has become an educational tool, which is no small feat. And now young children, are understanding what it is to accept one another, accept one another's differences, and see our differences as qualities. And this is really part of the DNA of the We Are Family Foundation. Could you tell us a little bit now about the foundation and what the fundamental purpose of the foundation is?
The only thing that you got wrong is you said schools. It was every school. We actually provided this film to every school in America. At that time, believe it or not, if you went to the government and tried to find out every elementary school in America, they had no database. We made that database. Imagine if you had some kind of national emergency and said, "Oh my God, somebody has poisoned all the children's milk that goes out." They wouldn't know how to track it down, at least not like that. After We Are Family Foundation, they had that database, and I'm very proud that we were able to do that. But anyway, your question was?
My question was, could you tell us a little bit now about the foundation, what the work of the foundation?
So we started working with very young children, and it's interesting how they started to get older, because that's what people do. We started working with teens, and we found that that was really the sweet spot. Teens were like me when I was a teenager, and I only thought of it today. So when I went to school, my major, when I finally turned 15, was thermonuclear hydrodynamics. And everybody talks about teenagers like we don't know what the hell we're talking about. And I'm going, I don't want to use profanity, but I want to say, motherfucker, I'm smarter than you. Are you telling me, oh, because you work at some, I don't know, whatever, that you know what I know? I have a scientific background. We go to the best schools in the country. And remember, I'm 71. So at that time, America had a standardized curriculum. You could go to a school in the ghetto and learn like all forms of mathematics. We used to learn what they used to call the new math. And I remember when they first introduced us to non-Euclidean geometry and things like that. We were 16, 17 years old. If you ask some jerk, somebody who's on TV going, you kids don't know what you're talking about. Oh, pardon me, Mr. Trump, do you understand non-Euclidean geometry? You're building buildings? Do you know who Euclid is? Sorry about that, guys. But it was amazing. No, it was amazing. The very first time we met, we were doing a television show, and it was me, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Donald Trump. And like I'm thinking, like, oh my God, Donald Trump, he's a builder. He understands the geometry. And I started talking to him about higher forms of mathematics, and he looked at me like I was like, duh, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God, he doesn't understand. He's like, sorry. But anyway, getting back to what you were talking about. So after we worked with teens, we realized that those teens were growing up and their missions were changing because in the environments that they lived in, either conditions were getting worse and they had to figure out new ways of dealing with it, or just their hearts moved on to problems that they thought were worse. And we decided that we needed to help those children. So we built schools. We built schools in quite a few countries, mainly in Africa, but we also built schools in Nicaragua, Nepal. Some of the places that were the most difficult to work in because we learned how to deal with tribal elders and the people who really were running the community and who had respect.
And you also introduced into that, I think, exchange programs for American students to go and help build the schools.
Oh, Americans did build the schools. As a matter of fact, women and young girls, they had never seen girls building buildings. Like, what was that about? And that was an important part of our program. And what was really wonderful, and I have to say, a gentleman just stopped me at the bathroom and he says, I'm great friends with the imam and the pastor and blah, blah, blah. I made a film about them and he loves you guys and blah, blah. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. When we started that program, when we would make deal with the tribal elders, one of the most important things were that we knew that the government, pardon me, getting over cold. We knew that the government had promised you these schools years ago, but they never followed through. But we were going to follow through. However, we have to make a deal with you. If you want that school built, they're going to be built by American kids. And in America, girls do work too. They don't just do laundry and get married. So they saw young girls and young women, well, they were girls, they were teens, building these buildings. And I could see that the residual effect that it had on the people was, oh my God, these girls were capable of doing certain things. And I know that some of the, like we like to call the OGs from We Are Family Foundation, some of the youngest girls from Africa who came to America to work with us were girls that didn't have formal education, but they had that special thing up there where they just look at the world and they could put one and one together and say, why does this work like that? Why does this work like that? And I remember, I got to tell you a cute story, and I hope I'm not getting too far off topic because I love to get off topic. They were looking at dinner because we had these gourmet chefs come in who volunteered. They wanted to be a part of the program. And the fish were filleted and cut, all beautiful and very French looking. And I remember these two young African girls, they were awesome. They looked at the fish and they were staring at it. And they said, Mr. Nile, what is that? And I said, those are fish. And they said, this is brilliant. This was a geometry question. What kind of square fish swims in a river? No, what kind of river does a square fish swim in? And I thought, like, bam, go ahead, girl. What kind of river? Because it's not aerodynamic. It's not shaped like that. It's this thing going up against the tide. And that's what she asked me. A girl who had never been to school, and they just sat there and washed clothes and did what the men of the village told them to do. And I was so proud because we would have never met girls like this had it not been for the 70 plus NGOs that we had been working with, saying that they had these special kids that you need to be introduced to.
So there were 17 schools built in total, I believe, giving education to over 3,700 children who would otherwise not have had an education.
Right.
And not only did you build schools and provide education, you also changed the perspective and how women are perceived in those communities as well, which is incredibly empowering for women and young girls. So today, the foundation has a global network of youth activists, youth-led organizations and projects spanning 6 continents, all of which are at the forefront of fighting racial and systemic injustice, education equity, creating safe spaces for LGBTQ communities, supporting campaigns around disability justice, and advocating to raise awareness around gender equality and climate justice. So, if we're a young person, how do we get involved with the foundation?
Come on. Just contact us and let's go. If you feel that we have something to offer you, I guarantee you have something to offer us. And I'm going to use the Black Panther Party as an example. So many kids would walk up to the office because they would see the way that the media portrayed us. And maybe it sort of looked exciting to them. Oh my God, I get to fight cops. Oh, I mean, it was like going, fight cops? That's what you think we do? No, we do this. And I know a great friend of mine who works with our organization a lot, named Jamal Joseph, a wonderful Black Panther. And Jamal came into the organization the first day, and he was looking to get a gun, and they gave him a bunch of books. And Jamal said, but I thought you were going to arm me. And the officer that they looked at Jamal said, little brother, I just did.
I think I'm very conscious of time. So do we have any questions? Does anyone have a question they'd like to pose? Anything they'd like to ask? Yes.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for such a inspiration to see you here today. You once said that if you have a song that speaks to the soul of a million strangers, there has to be something there, and you should embrace it. Do you see a guideline from this wisdom to the climate negotiations happening at COP this year? Or what should we seek to find to establish that?
Well, I think songs are important, but I think COP is more important because it speaks to the soul of every person on this planet. And we need to either find a way of educating people in a way that doesn't feel so politicized. And that's the thing that really bothers me the most, because I was at the very first Earth Day. They called it a celebration at the time. And the one thing that was so beautiful about it was that we all felt that, oh my God, the world is going in a different direction. This is really beautiful that we see things that are very, very, very important, and we see things that are important, but maybe there's a way to judge the most important. Our planet where we live is the most important because if it's not good for everyone, it's not good for anyone really. Uh, and, and and we saw that as young people. And today, for the first time, it hit me that I think the biggest problem why the the eco movement or the green movement, as we called it back in the day, didn't catch on with the same zeal and forward momentum as it did with that first Earth Day celebration is because what was going on in the rest of the world was horrible. Cambodia, I mean, Pol Pot was killing thousands and thousands of people. South America, I mean, people were being killed and families, like all of a sudden your brother would disappear. In Africa, Sudan, I mean, places that, I mean, Rwanda, I mean, it was all over the world. So people whose lineage was attached to those countries, all of a sudden the movement started to take different directions. And it wasn't that we were singularly focused on this super big problem that affected everybody on the planet. We started to focus on your problem and your problem and your problem and your problem. And there was room to do it all. The Panthers, we knew that there was room to do it all, or at least a lot of it, because whenever we were called upon to do something, be it the women's movement, the gay movement, is what we called it at that time, the gay liberation movement, or the White Panthers, or SDS, or whatever it was, we considered ourselves the vanguard. And because most of us knew martial arts and what have you, and the police were pretty brutal in those days. They didn't care, especially if your skin was not white. Oh my God, you were a target. Like if there was a big demonstration, they'd find you. They'd look at you and come running after you. Like everybody would spread out, but they're like, okay, I'm following your ass. So we were pretty good at protecting people from things like that. And it was just too many causes. There was so much going on in the world that was wrong. And it was so easy to get distracted because the news in those days really covered everything. You saw everything going on. Now it looks like just one thing is happening at a time. And that's, I mean, I actually think that's a very bad thing because, I have so many friends in Sudan. I never hear anything about that. I have friends now in so many countries. I never hear anything about that. And, it's really got to change. And maybe by concentrating on the ecology, that's something that we can all get into together. We can all say surviving, having the planet become healthy is a good thing. That's a great start. And maybe because I have to do it with somebody that I disagree with politically, but we still agree on this thing, maybe other things will start to come into alignment and we can become better human beings.
Change. That's the word that's resonating with me from what you've just said. Out of everything you've just said is change. And that's what the All Foundation does so brilliantly. It identifies young leaders, it identifies people that are passionate about a cause. It gives them accessibility and a platform, an accessible platform for them to really become change makers. It's been going for many, many years now, the foundation. It will go on for many, many more years. I'm extremely privileged to have one of the first cohort of the We Are Family Foundation as a colleague with me at the World Economic Forum. So the program is incredible. It's incredible, and it really gives voices that otherwise might not necessarily have the opportunity to be heard. It empowers them. And I would like to, on behalf of the World Economic Forum, congratulate you and thank you and Nancy and everyone else that works at the We Are Family Foundation for the incredible work that you're doing. I think we have to wrap up. It's coming up to 2:00. Are there any more questions? Anyone else like to take an opportunity to ask a question? Yeah, at the back.
Yeah. Come on, babe. Come in. Come on, people can't hear you.
Oluwaseyi is a We're Family Foundation global team leader.
I'm so happy to finally meet you in person. So my name is Oluwaseyi. I'm from Nigeria, and my question is really simple. What does change mean to you?
You mean change.
Awesome.
All of the people who have participated in our organization have changed us maybe more than we've changed them, because we're older. We have our own sort of prejudices, because I've seen way too much horror in this world, and you got a chance to not turn into me. Because as much as I really love people and as much as I care about people, I just see so many awful people in this world. A few years ago, I was at lunch with Deepak Chopra, and we were just talking about, the way the world has changed, and we talked about technology, and he knows that that's my background. And he said something that I will probably remember on my deathbed. 10 minutes ago, got it. I'll try and make this 9.5. He said to me that technology can be beautiful and diabolical, just like people. You're beautiful. Thank you.
Any more? Yeah, question here.
I can shout if you want. I was just curious, maybe it's kind of similar.
People behind you though can't hear you.
You see a lot of. Thank you. I'm sure you see, kind of as you mentioned, a lot of the horrific aspects of the world, kind of the yin and the yang. But I was curious. Maybe you can complete the following sentences. I still have hope because.
I still have hope because I have hope. I'm a very idealistic, old school hippie. And the world that I once believed in, which I actually magically thought would happen in 2000. And I know it's childish and I know it's silly, and especially a person who's a scientist and blah, blah, blah. I believe in that world because I think that there's going to come a time, which I hope doesn't happen, where we have no choice, right? I mean, it's getting worse and worse. And at a certain point in time, the good thing is that in the old days, we totally depended on government. Nowadays, corporations have a ton of power. They have the power to force governments to make new decisions because governments want money and so that's how I end that sentence, and I hope it makes sense because I really believe that most people are good. That when we see bad people doing bad things, we know that somehow that bullies have the power to make people who are softer and kinder do things that they would never even consider. Never ever do it a million years unless that bully wasn't around and going, whatever.
Any more questions? Yes.
I can probably speak loud enough. Well, time to everybody. I'm Miss Canada. My crown is sleeping today. But what I wanted you to comment on, I found an unlikely partner as an Indigenous person who had the platform to talk about world peace for real. But when I think about leadership and the kind of leadership we want, what would you say?
Somebody, these two. She's on her cell phone, right? And all leaders now are like that. But yeah, I think that the generation of and please forgive me, I always call our participants kids. That's because I'm 71 years old. I mean, damn, everybody's a kid to me. But the people that we work with have the biggest hearts. They've gone through hell, and they still seem to come up optimistic. I mean, some of the girls in our organization have told us stories that are just absolute horror stories. How they have to drive to school every day, driving around dead bodies and things like that. I mean, the things that are that I just couldn't even fathom. But they seem to come through it well. We have friends of our organizations who are boy soldiers, and we'll say to them things like, and this is going to sound incredible, how many people have you killed? And they'll say, oh, I don't know, about 100, 200. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And they're the sweetest, nicest people you've ever met. Because when they were young, they didn't understand the difference between life and death. Their cerebral cortex, they were children. They didn't know. It was like playing cowboys and Indians when I was a kid. I had a little cap gun, but I didn't really want to kill anybody. It was just a game. The same thing as playing football or something. So, I just think young people are our future, and I think that there are now. I mean, I only thought of this today. What if when I was 15, instead of getting my job with Sesame Street, what if IBM had hired me? I would have kicked ass in IBM. I would have been killing, because the stuff that I was learning at that time was the absolute newest technology. It was the stuff that they were learning in schools. It wasn't like that the corporations were looking at it like, oh, this is going to make us billions of dollars. They were perfectly happy making a couple of $1 million a year. So we were just, you have to take youth seriously, because they're idealistic. They got the energy, they have the passion, and that's what we really believe in. That energy, passion, love, and drive.
Thank you so much, Nile Rodgers. We've been on a journey this afternoon from the late 70s to 2001 to today. We've heard some incredible stories from you, and the foundation is, again, doing an incredible job. Thank you so much for all your passion, for all your time. Please, everyone, look up the We Are Family Foundation.
Hey, honestly, it's my people. I just raise money.
Thank you so much, everybody.
They do the work.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nile. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. Thank you, bro.